Okay, well, according to the notes, you're up first. Welcome to episode 1 of the podcast. Peter is not ready, so I'm just going to talk and get warmed up a little bit. All right, welcome to episode 1 of the podcast. My name is Sam.
I am Peter. I'm the creator of the Payne Woodshop, and this is going to be sort of our little fun thing to do in addition to everything else we're doing. So our goals are just to create a space where we can have other people on and interview a bunch of different people, hear a lot of different people's stories, learn a lot about, the maker process and all of that, and sort of, give you updates throughout the week as I'm working on projects, as Sam's working on projects, really just give you a bit of a window into our life and a little bit more of a relaxed type of window where, we're just hanging out talking, and you can listen or watch and see what you enjoy and
enjoy. Because we are in the wood shop and that's how this idea came about, we're going to try to focus on projects, about creating, about making, and kind of bring you through our stories hopefully as well as stories of other people. So let's get right into it today. We're going to keep it super broad, and we want to talk about how making, how creating, and how having that mindset has impacted our lives. So, Peter, our first question: how did you begin making things? How did this mindset come about? What influenced you? What inspired you to start creating and building and working on your own projects?
So, the maker curiosity mindset, I think, I've had forever. I mean, I've always been tinkering with things. I've always been building things. I've always been interested in building things, big machines and all of that. I used to live in Florida, and I used to love boats, and my first word was actually boat. And so I just have always had an interest in, machines and how things work and all that. One of the biggest things that my mom always said is, she would give me presents, and then and toys, and I would take them apart to see how they worked rather than actually enjoying them and playing with them. And she always thought that was weird, but I think it's really, turned into, a little bit about like who I am, what I like to do, all that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of different stories like that. I've always been interested in Legos and Connects and all those, Lincoln Logs at an early age, anything to really just build something and create something that I can see, from start to finish. That's always been something I've really been interested in. And, slowly over time, I think it's just developed into more and more curiosity about building things and working with my hands. I'd much rather be out working outside, splitting firewood or doing something outside, doing some work, and rather than sitting inside on the couch or something like that. It's just way more interesting to me, way more enjoyable, because I feel satisfied and feel like I'm doing something rather than just sitting at home and wasting my time almost. I really just like getting out there and doing stuff and being okay with failure and all that, because this could have all gone a completely different way, but it didn't, and that's awesome. But I had to put myself out there. I took a lot of risks in order to get here. And, it's turned into something that I spend almost every day. And we're recording this on a Sunday. We could easily be sitting on the couch, ordering pizza, whatever. But, we'd much rather be here recording a podcast and doing something worthwhile rather than, kicking back and relaxing. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think that mindset of creating things and making things, like you said, it all starts with Lego sets and taking apart toys and figuring out how things work. And it's that curiosity. But then it stems off. It's not just about building and making and working with your hands, but also, creating things like businesses and, podcasts and YouTube videos. And you have this desire to take what's in your head and put it out there into the world and make it a reality. Sure. So I think, and it starts at a young age for a lot of people, even if you're not making things from day one, even if it's just, helping out your grandpa or working in the garage or, small projects and curiosity. And then it becomes this sort of obsession that is I guess, sort of an outsource of your creativity and everything going on in your head, and it's an outlet of what you think of and kind of how you came up. So it's interesting. It sounds like for you it started from a young age, and I know it did for me as well. So I'm sure that has altered your mindset. I'm sure that's influenced you a lot in what you've gone and what you've created here with the Payne Woodshop. So I guess the question is, as you've grown up, number one, how did making things really influence your mindset? And number two, what were some of those most memorable moments? What projects for you? What did you make that really, opened up your eyes or changed how you viewed things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point. It's like, using your mind and activating your mind versus, sitting back home. And I always say like an active mind is a healthy mind. And so, we would much rather, even if I'm having a bad day, if I come in here and work for an hour or two, everything slowly starts to melt away. It's not immediate, but, over time, you work on something, build something, and you see the change from start to finish in it. And it really, is satisfying to see. And you see the change that you've made. And there's a lot of different projects that I think, really developed this. I wouldn't say this is a project, but the biggest thing that sort of formed me in working hard and working outside and all that, and working with wood and all that was, I want to say probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I started splitting my own firewood, which sounds like the most random thing ever, but it's turned into one of my favorite things to do, especially over the winter. There's really nothing like it being outside in the cold and splitting firewood. It's just heating up, and by the time you're done, you're in, your jeans, boots, and a t-shirt, and it's 30 degrees outside, and you're sweating, and there's nothing like it. But probably 5 or 6 years ago, I started splitting firewood, kind of a necessity. Our family burns firewood in our fireplace, not for heat, but really just for enjoyment. And we got a firewood delivery, and a lot of the pieces were way too big to burn for us, and someone had to do it. And I kind of picked up the reins and started doing it because I'd worked with some sort of wood before, and I'm like, watched a YouTube video, figured it out, and started doing it. And then ever after that, we had a few trees come down, we got a chainsaw, and ever since I've just about been splitting wood for my family ever since. And it's always a fun thing, going home on the weekends or over the winter and splitting the firewood for the next year. And it sounds stupid, but it is a formative experience, and seeing that change, because I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that change. Because you go from something that's a dead fallen tree that has no use and is just gonna decay in the woods, to turning into something that you can really all join around. I mean, we would all sit around the campfire in the evenings, and there's nothing better than that. And knowing that that's the wood that you burn or you split, it's just satisfying. And I think it's the same way when I'm working in here. When I see a finished product, or I see one of you guys post your product, like your charcuterie board, and tag me, and you're just loving having a handmade product. Every single time it makes me smile, because I know that I put so much work into that, and I saw it go from rough cut wood all the way down to a finished product, handles, oil, all that, and it's really awesome. I would say a secondary experience was, this is completely random and I just thought of it, but working with my grandfather, which is part of the name of the Payne Woodshop, which we'll get into in a future episode. But I want to say in like 2nd or 3rd grade, we had to build one of the pilgrim ships or something like that. And he was always a woodworker, and he took me down to his workshop, and we all built our little wood, boats. They were like little, yeah, when I'm home, I'll find a picture and I'll post it, but it's kind of funny. But it always sparked my interest, and ever after that, I've sort of been interested in woodworking, all that. And even before I started this business, I was always watching YouTube videos, and I always thought, I'm gonna have my own wood shop, and it didn't ever happen until quarantine started, and then, my internship got canceled because of COVID. And I'm not, again, like I said, I'm not someone who sits down and relaxes, and I don't take comfort in the comfortable. I like to get out and challenge myself, and so challenge myself to make this business. And never would have thought I'd have a commercial space, especially this size, with all this equipment that I bought myself and paid for all by myself, and pay the rent by myself. Don't have any parental help in that. It's not my parents paying for it. It's, you know, me, and that's just a satisfying feeling.
Definitely. And I want to ask something you mentioned for a couple of your things was watching YouTube videos. And more broadly than that, I think that a lot of people, you know, when they want to get into stuff like this, I mean, starting your own wood shop is a huge endeavor.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that later. But, you know, I think people think you have to spend massive amounts of money to really get started in creating. So talk about, you know, a free source like YouTube or just the internet in general or social media. How much have you learned? How much are you able to say that you learned from free sources like that?
More than I care to admit, and more than is probably safe to admit. You know, I've learned to use a lot of tools through YouTube, and I certainly would never recommend that. And if people, I don't really have many people work in my shop. It's really just me and Sam, and just for safety reasons, even if people do come in, I don't care how long you've been working with the tool. I teach you how I use it, because that's, I believe, the safest way to use it, because I've just done so much research. But I mean, you can learn so much through YouTube.
Well, and you can learn the wrong things.
Well, you can learn the wrong. Hopefully, we're telling you the right things. But yeah, I mean, you can learn everything. Fixing up, you know, look, all the cast iron tabletops from all my big tools when I bought them were all completely rusted through. Not rusted through, but completely rusted on the surface. And you know, I was nervous about that, and I didn't know how to fix those. And before I bought them, I saw pictures, and I looked up on YouTube, and I saw someone use a, you know, degreaser and some Scotch-Brite, some scuffing pads, and some sandpaper, and cleaned them all up, and that's what I did, and worked perfect. So there really is a lot that you can learn, you know, not in a traditional sense, and the barrier to entry to opening a full wood shop, I would say, is, you know, decently high. The operating costs are pretty high, but you know, to buy your own circular saw and drill is, I mean, for a Ryobi one, a cheap one, it's probably $100, $125.
If you're willing to bargain hunt and use Craigslist and all that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, with that, I mean, obviously there's tools that make things easier, but you could build a bookcase, you could build, I don't know, you could build a lot. I mean, especially if you get like a random orbit sander or something like that.
And I mean, that's another thing YouTube can be good for, is just looking up, you know, simple projects with simple tools, and there's plenty of videos on that. Yeah,
and we certainly plan to do more of those in the future. I mean, the 1 hour workshop that we posted is kind of a little bit like that. It's just like an easy, quick thing to do. Obviously, it's using a lot of the expensive tools, but you know, we plan to do some more simple tools, and keep your eyes out. We plan to do some like hand tool stuff and really, you know, challenging ourselves, which will be awesome. But yeah, we will certainly do some more easy stuff, some, you know, stuff with just a standard 2x4 by 8 foot piece of pine that you can get from any Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, anything like that, any sort of lumber store, and turning it into something awesome. So you know, don't think that you have to go to X hardwood distributor to buy your wood and, you know, this fancy woodcraft shop to buy all your tools. You know, you can start in the big box store and create some really, really awesome things. A lot of the stuff that I've made has come from that, and a lot of, I mean, heck, I really started with pallets, and that was my starter wood, and
which are practically free.
Yeah, I got them for free. You know, you got to look hard to get them, but with that, I used a reciprocating saw to break them apart, and a nail punch and a hammer to get the nails out, and I had free wood to start with. And obviously, it's not perfect, and I would urge people to try to use other resources too. But you know, that was awesome, and it created a decently low barrier to entry, at least at the start. And it, you know, you can tinker with stuff, and that's the biggest thing is, you know, don't get stuck in the I can't do it because I don't have the shop or I don't have someone to teach me. You know, I'm more or less self-taught. I mean, a lot of people like learn from their dads or grandfathers, and my grandfather wasn't in good enough health at the time where I could learn, and my dad, no offense to him if he's listening, but he can't fix anything to save his life. YouTube is a huge resource for him for fixing stuff around the house. But yeah, no, he didn't teach me anything. I could teach him way more than he could teach me. And so, you know, it's really just self-taught, and you just got to try to build something, and build a coffee table. If it doesn't look great,
build another one.
Yeah, build another one. That's fine. And honestly, even if it doesn't look great, you're going to look down and say, I built that. And that's awesome.
And that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to mention, and for people to understand that, because YouTube has been so influential for you and obviously for me, not just in getting inspired, but also really teaching us, and with what I'm pursuing over there, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a later video. But that's really the purpose as to why this channel has started in the first place. It's
Oh, yeah.
not for our own fame or our own fun, but is really to share the knowledge that we feel like we've gained from YouTube, back with people, younger versions of ourselves,
Yes.
basically. So
Yes,
very
100%.
very cool. So I guess that's a good starting point. The entry costs are fairly low, and you were able to basically teach yourself up to the point of being able to sell materials, which is really cool. So what I want to know is, from those first days of splitting wood for your fire, how has kind of that mentality of being a maker and that feeling of being able to create something from raw materials, how has that inspired you and helped you get to this point of having your own shop and really launching your own business?
I mean, it's inspired me so much. Like, I think if I, from a young age said like, oh, I can't do that, and just didn't start doing it, I don't think I would be here today, because I wouldn't have had the experience of, taking something that I didn't know and teaching myself and doing it. Yeah, I mean, I think all of that teaches you so much. That's, again, splitting wood is one of the simplest things, and after doing it for half an hour, you pretty much know how to do it. Like, there's not that much that goes involved. You swing an axe, you hit a piece of wood, it comes apart.
But even that's one of those things
Yeah.
that someone might look at and is intimidated by.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But if you just get started and get into it a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it is intimidating, but it's something that you gotta try it. You gotta challenge yourself every day, and I think that's the biggest thing. And those simple things. So maybe splitting wood is a little too intimidating for you, but you've never used a grill or cooked on the stove or anything like that. Like something very, very simple of taking something from a raw, unprocessed, whatever state into something finished. So maybe you've never baked a cake before, and I think it's indoor activities, outdoor activities all come in the same way. But I think it teaches you a lot. So just do something, learn something, look up how to do something, and just go ahead and do it. And I think that's the biggest thing, because each time you do something, you learn, and that's awesome.
Yeah, so absolutely. So learn by doing. Go out there. If you have something you want to do, get it done. Thanks for listening to episode 1. We have some awesome stuff coming in episode 2. Hope you enjoyed. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you, guys.